So in my last few videos when I talked about how the DCEU has failed up to this point, and I use the term failed in the past tense deliberately, I got more than a few comments from people telling me that apparently it hasn't failed in the least, there's nothing to be worried about, it's flawless, everything's going according to plan. In fact, those comments were almost as popular as the "you used that clip of Batman saying something's definitely bleeding too many times," which, yeah, looking back on it, I definitely did. Lesson learned. But with the recent release, positive reception, and overwhelming financial success of Aquaman as Shazam, as well as the upcoming Joker movie, which everyone I've spoken to is really looking forward to, I think there's only one conclusion we can draw from this. The DCEU is officially dead. What? And I already know what all of you DC fans are typing away in the comments section right now. What the hell are you talking about? This is a sign that the DCEU is back on track, isn't it? No, it isn't. If anything, the success of Aquaman and Shazam, as well as the creation of upcoming films like the standalone Joker movie, are the final few nails in the DCEU's coffin, and today we're gonna look over why. We've already covered the miserable tone of Man of Steel, the abysmally blatant attempt to set up a movie universe in Batman v Superman, the whatever Suicide Squad was meant to be, and the hilarious attempt to change course in Justice League. Now let's take a good look at how Aquaman and Shazam have, between the two of them, pretty much thrown all of that wasted time, money, and energy into the bin. After the terrible reception of Batman v Superman and the success, both financial and critical, of Wonder Woman, the head honchos of Warner Bros. Started to have second thoughts about its whole cinematic universe idea. In an effort to right the very leaky ship that they had set sail on, Warner Bros. Created a DC Films division, with Jeff Johns, a prominent figure in DC, and executive John Berg as its heads. After Wonder Woman, Johns announced that subsequent DC films going forward would focus more on the personalities of the individual characters, as well as de-emphasize the shared universe nature of the franchise. Diane Nelson, the president of DC, stated that our intention certainly moving forward is using the continuity to help make sure that nothing is diverging in a way that doesn't make sense, but that there's no insistence upon an overall storyline or interconnectivity in that universe. Moving forward, you'll see the DC movie universe being a universe, but one that comes from the heart of the filmmaker who's creating them. Yeah, it's all well and good you saying that, but the problem is you've still got one movie left in your little cinematic universe, and let's just say it ain't cheap. Justice League made history upon its release for being one of the most expensive movies ever made. Production costs were estimated to be close to $300 million, with an additional $25 million added on top of that for reshoots after Joss Whedon took over the role of director. And then there was an additional $150 million added on top of that for the global marketing. In short, the total cost of the film came in excess of $475 million and made a total of $657.9 million at the box office, which is actually the lowest amount ever recorded for a DCEU film. Even though it was initially predicted to reach a break-even point of $750 million so that it would neither turn a profit nor be a loss, Justice League became a huge bomb for the studio, costing them at least $60 million and causing them to drastically change the structure of their movie universe, basically by throwing the whole thing out the window. As a result of all of this, Justice League turned out to be the final killing bullet in the DCEU. Batman v Superman garnered more than a little controversy, but at the end of the day, it was still able to turn a profit. Justice League, on the other hand, was a tangled mess pretty much from the word go, and managed to set Warner Bros. Back millions and millions of dollars. Really, the company had no choice but to change tactics. And then along came... Lo and behold, right when the DCEU is lying on its deathbed, along comes a new DC film to throw the traditionally grim, dark aesthetic of Batman v Superman into stark relief and give us something actually, fun. In many ways, Aquaman is the first proper attempt by Warner Brothers to restart the DCEU by basically remaking the first film that they had in their roster, Man of Steel. If you think about it, the heroes in both movies share very similar traits. Super strength, bulletproof, incredibly agile, one can fly in the air, the other can swim really fast, both are outsiders cursed with an incredible responsibility to their respective peoples, both go up against dualistic antagonists, both are hunky beefcakes. By having Aquaman be the first of the, shall we say, post-Justice League DC movies, Warner Brothers were effectively reassuring the audience that they had learnt from their mistakes, by basically doing everything in their power to not be like the films that had come before. For one thing, the movie is a great deal more vibrant. I mean, just look at that water, look at Atlantis, look at those herbs. Okay, stop. Jesus, this movie is making me question my sexuality. Aquaman pretty much inverts the entire color palette of Man of Steel by quite literally bringing the comic book that it is adapted from to life. The visuals pop out of the screen, the action isn't the least bit shaky, it's actually very easy to follow, and there exists a great amount of weight to it. By having the visuals be so, well, visual, the film acts as a direct counter to everything that the DCEU had been up to that point. This is also supported by some of the scripting choices, for instance Arthur Curry choosing to let Black Manta's father die in the opening. In a sense, you could see this as a refutation of one of the biggest criticisms lobbed at the DCEU, that the heroes can often act quite callous when it comes to saving or taking lives. Aquaman does the same thing as Batman and Superman did in their respective movies at the start of this film, and it leads to the creation of his ultimate arch nemesis. There are actual consequences to him allowing someone to die. That's not something that you see so often in a DCEU film. Another strength that Aquaman has is its lead. Jason Momoa is, well, Jason Momoa. He's charming, charismatic, a complete badass, practically looks like he was born to play a comic book hero. He's just the perfect guy to have as your protagonist. It's impossible not to like him. By having a more colorful and vibrant aesthetic and actually having a lead who can hold the audience's investment, Warner Brothers basically went, hey, we heard your criticisms, we heard your complaints, here's some actual color, some actual stakes in the story. Are you happy now? And for the most part, I have to say that I am, but that being said, the film is far from flawless. And the irony is that a lot of those flaws come from, big surprise, the few loose connections that Aquaman has to the DCEU. For one thing, it has, shall we say, tonal problems that aren't dissimilar to the same problems that we saw in Justice League. The film hops from serious and dramatic to lighthearted and comedic a few too many times. In the same scene where stuff like this happens, we also get stuff like this. Yeah, big dramatic fight scene ending in our hero injured in a very bad way, also has a guy sticking his head into a toilet. Then there is Aquaman himself. While I still hold to the fact that Jason Momoa does an excellent job acting-wise, there are still some issues when it comes to the way that his character is written. Again, a lot of the fault in this lies in the film that preceded this one. Justice League didn't do a whole lot to establish Aquaman's character aside from him being a superpowered surfer dude, and the film that's named after him doesn't do a whole lot to evolve him past that point. It certainly tries to, but there's still not a whole load of development to speak of. The Aquaman we see here is pretty much the same Aquaman we saw in Justice League, only he's a king at the end. And that's another issue. The character arc that they set up in Aquaman's movie really doesn't fit with his actual character. The whole conceit of the film is that Arthur Curry has to step up to be the king of Atlantis in order to stop his brother from declaring war on the surface world. I honestly don't feel like I've seen anything all that kingly in this guy by the end. What attributes of a king does he demonstrate throughout the film? He's a fierce and determined warrior, sure, but those things don't automatically make you a good leader. Compare this Aquaman with the Aquaman from the Injustice games as the nearest example.
You threaten me? Tread carefully.
I call it an ass whooping.
I'm the king of Atlantis. I answer to no one, unlike you.
Your fish ship has been marinating in chum butter. I'm gonna come out smelling like swamp butt.
A thorough review might illuminate new strategies for negotiation.
It's that guy behind us!
You would give away your kingdom like a pair of worn boots. To a surface dweller?
Could have just peed on it.
See the difference? Doesn't the game version exude so much more power, so much more authority than the film version? You get a sense that not only is this guy a great warrior, but he's also an effective leader. He's diplomatic, he's strategic, he cares for his kingdom and its people. He holds himself up like, well, a king. I never really got anything like that out of the film version of Aquaman. Now don't get me wrong, Jason Momoa still exudes a fair amount of personality and charisma on screen, and he is a great main hero in his own right. It's just the way that his Aquaman is written doesn't really capture as much of the character as it could have. And a lot of the reason for that is that this is meant to be a continuation of the same character that we saw in Justice League. There are also a few other problems with the script, like the exposition.
In Atlan's time, 7 kingdoms were won.
It was forged by the greatest weapon masters in history.
She had fled an arranged marriage.
Legend says that Trident was imbued with the power to command the sea.
The Gateway Bridge is a remnant of the old world.
We had unlocked the secret of unlimited energy, and the king lived out the remainder of his days in self-imposed exile.
Jesus, I thought this was called Aquaman, not History of Atlantis 101. I've said a million times about how I hate it when movies handhold their audience through a story, and this is one of the most prominent examples. There's also not a whole lot to praise when it comes to the supporting characters. Jason Momoa and Amber Heard don't have a whole ton of chemistry. Their whole relationship comes down to that stupid movie trope of, oh, she doesn't get along with our hero, but as the film goes on, she starts to warm up to his charms and eventually they become a thing. Willem Dafoe is just there to explain things to the audience. Patrick Wilson isn't all that compelling as a villain. If anything, Black Manta was more intriguing as an adversary for our hero, such to the point that I wish that he was the main baddie. While Jason Momoa is great in his role, the people around him just aren't all that compelling. They are there to serve a function and not much else, and to their defense, they do succeed in that. So for all of its tonal problems, underwhelming characterization, and poor scripting in places, Aquaman still makes for an exciting, mildly entertaining comic book movie. It aspires to be nothing more or less than fun, which is a surprising breath of fresh air in a DC movie, and just the shot in the arm that we needed after the disaster that was Justice League. But if Aquaman curved the ball for Warner Brothers and the DCEU by actually letting the audience enjoy themselves, that was nothing compared to the film that was about to follow it. Ah yes, Shazam, the least DCEU-like out of all of the DCEU films. Just like Aquaman, Shazam does absolutely everything in its power to distance itself from the grim dark tone of movies like Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, while still trying to maintain greater consistency than films like Suicide Squad or Justice League. Now in my personal opinion, Shazam is far superior to Aquaman for several reasons. For one thing, it has a considerable advantage to its predecessor in that its hero wasn't already introduced in a previous film. It works from an almost entirely blank slate, not allowing any influence to enter from previous DC films, which means that it can dedicate all of its time to setting up its lead character and making us, the audience, form an attachment to him. Instead of constantly throwing exposition or setups for future movies at the audience like pretty much every DC film since Man of Steel, Shazam focuses entirely on the emotions and experiences of our main cast. The lead, Billy Batson, is a perfect protagonist, strangely for the exact opposite reason as Jason Momoa in Aquaman. He's not a badass, he's not a grizzled, hardened warrior, he is a literal child in a superpowered adult's body, and the film takes total advantage of that. The characterization, the humor, the themes, and tone of the film centers entirely around the trials, tribulations, and ultimate positivity of childhood and family. In a sense, the day is saved because our main hero is a kid, because he's not a badass. He spends most of the movie trying to act independent and more adult as he searches for his mother, but after he finds out the kind of person that she really is, that being the kind of person who would just abandon her infant son as a theme park, he realizes the value of the loving and supportive foster family that he has right in front of him. Family quite literally saves the day. How often do you see that in a DCEU film? Then there's the humor, and there is a fair amount of it here, which is very, very refreshing. If you need proof that Shazam completely distances itself in the DCEU, just take a look at half of the jokes. Our hero gets his powers, looks like an adult, and the first thing that he does is try to buy alcohol for himself and his friend. He makes a YouTube channel out of himself. He shows off his lightning powers to an audience while Eye of the Tiger plays in the background. He goes into a frickin' strip club, for God's sake. These things are funny and entertaining and not at all the kind of stuff that you would see in something like, say, Batman v Superman. Aquaman broke the DCEU mold by creating a visually interesting world, by having a likable main hero and including some stunningly colourful visuals. Shazam continues that tradition by centering itself around a genuinely heartfelt theme and tone, and having most of the dialogue be funny. And even when Shazam does go for the darker moments, it works within the context of the story. The bad guy and the 7 deadly sins he summons works as a good contrast to the hero, even if he's not the most interesting antagonist ever. He is somebody whose childhood was taken from him. He was told over and over again that he's not worthy, that he's not a man, that he's not pure of heart. And he's internalized that lesson to the point that he is pretty much the exact opposite of Billy Batson. He has no hope, he has no family, all he has is his lust for power, which makes him the perfect puppet for the 7 deadly sins. While he's not the most compelling or entertaining villain, he's still a good foil for our main hero. The darker elements make sense here. They aren't just thrown in there to seem edgy, they serve a purpose, they have a point within the narrative. That's how you tell a good story. Really, of all the things that I could compare Shazam to, it kind of feels like if Goonies was a superhero film. It celebrates and revels in its childishness and doesn't shy away from making its characters likable or going to some dark places when it's warranted. It sets itself apart from the DCEU by concentrating on the characters rather than the action, by utilizing a genuinely funny sense of humor, and by having a strong heart and a good moral about family, as well as remembering to treat its audience with respect. It makes kids want to be superheroes and adults feel like kids again, and that is something special. Shazam is the perfect film to reinvent DC in a post-Justice League world, and the irony is that it couldn't really have accomplished that without also burying the franchise that led to its creation. And that's really the main point I'm trying to make here. Aquaman and Shazam being so entertaining and financially successful didn't save the DCEU, it killed it. The main flaw with the DCEU that led to its ultimate downfall was, as I stated in my previous videos, its obsession with creating a cinematic universe. The head honchos at Warner Brothers valued setting up the next installment in their franchise more than making any of them any good. Batman v Superman was not made to be an entertaining or engaging movie, but to make money and nothing else. What sets Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam apart from the crowd is that they were trying to be good movies. Whether in the case of Wonder Woman, which tried to be a compelling narrative about one person fighting against the destructive tendencies of humanity, or in the case of Aquaman, which attempted to create a visually stunning and entertaining thrill ride, or in the case of Shazam, which tried to capture the essence of childhood, both positive and negative, in a fun, hilarious, and deeply heartfelt way, the thing that all of these movies have in common is that they tried. They were more interested in telling compelling and entertaining stories with engaging characters that mattered more to them than just setting up a franchise. All Batman v Superman tried to do was sucker the audience into paying out millions of dollars to watch a poorly constructed cinematic universe. All Suicide Squad accomplished was putting a bullet right in the damn thing's neck. All Justice League ended up being was the final death rattle from the franchise as it fell backwards into its coffin. Movies like Aquaman and Shazam were successful because they distanced themselves from the DCEU. They work because they share damn near no similarities to it, right down to the color palette, to the more hopeful and bright aesthetic, to the likable characters, to the soundtrack, to the lack of references to other films. They do everything in their power not to be like Batman v Superman or Justice League, which is why they are so much more fun to watch. There's a reason that the end credits of Shazam depict a drawing of Shazam beating up or humiliating the previously established heroes of the DCEU. This is a confirmation of the fact that what came before is now officially dead and burned to the ground, and these new films that are coming out are the phoenixes rising from the ashes. Aquaman and Shazam, between the two of them, have put a final definitive end to the blight that was the DCEU. And now that that utterly bloated, useless waste of time and money is dead and buried, maybe we can finally start to see some more interesting DC films for a change. The Joker movie is on the horizon and it looks fantastic. A sequel to Wonder Woman is coming out next year, so I think that I can safely say that for the first time since The Dark Knight, I am actually hopeful and excited for a DC film. But if you have your own thoughts on this, if there's anything that I missed out, leave it in the comments down below, hit the like button, subscribe, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.